Last weekend, I visited a homeless encampment. Again. I spent just over an hour there. It's a relatively large encampment which was set up a few months ago in the summer, obviously when it was much warmer outside. It's located in Coburg, Ontario. It's a small town, relatively small town, about an hour outside of Toronto, the largest city in the country. This homeless encampment has a name. It's called Camp 413. I walked around freely. I went inside some of the larger tents which hold supplies. I checked out some of the winterized tents and some tents which included small wood stoves, similar to what I have at home. I was advised that most of the wood that they use for the wood stoves has been donated. I also had an opportunity to speak to some of the residents of Camp 413 and they shared their experiences, both good and bad. This isn't my first time visiting a homeless encampment. A couple weeks ago, I posted about my experience stumbling upon a homeless encampment under a bridge while I was in full uniform as a police officer. I'll link that video at the end. I shared some of my thoughts of why someone, including myself, may choose to stay in a homeless encampment rather than go to a homeless shelter. You should see some of the pushback that I received in my inbox. They told me that somebody who's been involved in policing for their entire life, like me, shouldn't be making excuses for homeless encampments and that I might be enabling the people who want to stay there. Very interesting. But I received a lot of positive messages as well. Whether you agree or disagree with what I'm going to say in this video, homeless encampments are popping up all over the country, all over North America. Now, before I attended, I sat with a gentleman I've known for many years now. He's been advocating for the homeless, hurting, and hungry right across the province, and I have a lot of respect for him. Now, I mentioned earlier that this encampment has a name, Camp 413. Giving a camp a name gives some of the residents a sense of belonging, perhaps a sense of identity. When I was growing up, my brothers and my friends and I, we would go to the forests and make all kinds of forts and shelters. And guess what? We named them. Everybody wants to feel a sense of belonging somewhere, a space. A feeling of belonging and a sense of community, no doubt, leads to less anxiety. I was advised that the residents' overall mind health has improved, which has ultimately led to less drug use. From what I was told, Camp 413 has not had one drug overdose since its beginning. Moving frequently from shelter to shelter, moving out of parks and bus shelters, getting kicked out, not knowing where you'll be spending the next couple of days or nights would no doubt lead to some extreme anxiety. And we all have different ways of coping with that anxiety. So instances of drug use in general have decreased by the residents, changing how they see themselves, but also changing how the community sees them. We should know by now that this is not all about drug use, or we should know. This is also about mental health. And the mental health system has failed many people, not just the homeless. Their situation would of course be amplified without proper resources or support behind them. Improvements are being made through awareness and lobbying, though they're not always the right improvements. It seems like everybody has their own fix, a simple fix, but it's often just a temporary fix without investment. They want to be the ones to get a raise, get promoted, or get elected because of their grand idea. This has been done by individuals at all levels of government. Camp 413 isn't far from the road at all. So while I was there was lots of residents, lots of drivers that were slowing down just to check out the camp. There was a police cruiser that circled around a couple times. And listen, that's not always a bad thing. It can be very positive, and the residents are starting to know that. Camp 413 is the only homeless encampment that I know of which is on provincial property. The province has provided outhouses for the residents, which are just off to the side, and there's a large garbage dumpster just to try to cut down on some of the waste. This is appreciated by Camp 413 residents and by the surrounding community. Security cameras are installed and guards are on duty. I spoke to a couple of them, very respectful gentlemen, very understanding. So back to the donations. People have been dropping off wood for the stoves. There's been people dropping off food, sleeping bags, and all kinds of other supplies. Now, you may see this as enabling, but when there's people in need, does it really matter to you? I mean, to the average citizen, does it really matter? Your first thoughts isn't to try to fix the situation that led to this. Your first thoughts are, there's people that might freeze to death, that are starving. It's to assist them. Many of the people that are dropping off food and all kinds of other supplies, they've had family members that they've lost, that the system has failed, multiple systems. You can't ask people not to care. Listen, winter's here, but we really haven't hit a truly cold winter yet. Those winterized tents, they're great, but without any heat source whatsoever, the people inside will freeze to death during a cold snap. I know people with trucks that would just back up and drop off a cord or two of wood just to keep them from freezing to death. They may be frustrated, but they have good hearts and they don't want to see people suffer. And all the police officers that I've worked with and that I've spoken to, they actually all feel the same way. There's countries out there that haven't only been dealing with homeless encampments for years, but generation after generation of people have been living in these encampments. Sections of large cities have been carved out for encampments for years. Thousands living in encampments while thousands of others drive by in their luxury vehicles. It's become an accepted way of life by everybody. This should not be happening in this country, and I pray that that's never the scenario. Mistakes have been made in the past, brutal mistakes. And I mentioned that in my last video as well. It's no longer rounding people up and getting them out of an encampment just to fend for themselves, or kicking somebody out of a bank vestibule on a cold night and they're stuck fending for themselves. Send them on their way. That's not how to deal with these issues. I don't have the answers on what the best solution is for this, okay? I know I have my thoughts. I have a platform which gives me a voice where I can raise awareness and hopefully capture the attention of those with some sway who may want to get involved in the future. As I mentioned in my last video, if your life consists of getting up, commuting to work, commuting home, doing some shopping, getting dinner ready, going to bed, and doing it all over the next day, you may never be exposed to this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not your fault. We don't need speaking points, quick videos. We don't need a camera in somebody's face waiting for them to say the right thing that they can post, or what's even better for views, saying the wrong thing. Thank you for watching this video. If you've made it all the way to the end, I want to say I really appreciate you sticking around. I do my best to respond to all the comments, and as I also mentioned in previous videos, there are podcasts and discussions on talk radio and such which happen from some of the comments in these videos. So if you have some comments you want to share, please do so. I appreciate it. Be safe out there, look after one another, and perhaps we will see you again.